We say what they can't radio.
What's up, world? Welcome to another episode of Young, Gifted, and Black. Every week, I do my best to bring people of culture, people that service their community. Today, my guest is Lakeisha. She owns this beautiful restaurant. She has two called Greedy Vegan, and I've been trying to get her on this podcast for like the last 5 months, and I stayed consistent. And she just broke, and she was like, "Friday, Carrick, I got you."
That's right.
And I made it happen. Introduce yourself, even though I just introduced you.
It's okay. My name is Letitia Daring, and I own Greedy Vegan. We have two locations here in Brooklyn, one on Bergen Street between Nostrand and Rogers, and the other, our new location, is actually on Ralph Avenue between Macon and McDonough.
Beautiful. I've been vegan before. I'm not gonna sit here and lie and say that I'm vegan 100%, but I think I'm at your establishment about 3 to 4 times a week.
Yes, sir.
Especially being an entrepreneur and always, being on the move. I make sure that I put good food in my body. But a vegan lifestyle is not for everybody, and a lot of the reasons is because people don't understand what are the benefits of being vegan. So what made you open up a vegan restaurant, and what made you become vegan?
Well, I'm going to reverse those questions. I'm going to answer the
Sure.
second one first. My mom is Rastafarian, and if you're familiar with that culture, you
Yes.
know that they live off the land, or the way of life is to live off the land.
Yes.
And so that was my first introduction to vegan lifestyle, was through my parent. And I didn't really understand it as a child growing up in terms of the benefits, because it just was how I was raised. Now, being an adult, having had chicken and fish, I've never had red meat in my entire life.
Okay.
But you know, you have so many people in your family that are plagued with diseases. You have so many people in the community that are plagued with diseases. Really, as a community, we're surrounded by disease and illness, and it stems from what we put in our body and what our body refuses to break down. And so I chose to adapt a vegan lifestyle as an adult because I know it's the best thing for my body.
I agree. And what made you then open up a vegan restaurant?
Well, I've traveled a lot in terms of just international travel, and I love food. And, I love Brooklyn. I'm born and raised here in Brooklyn. And I just felt like there were a lot of vegan restaurants that lacked flavor.
Yeah, I agree.
And lacked diversity in their menu. Like if you go to one vegan restaurant, that you've been to them all because they're all selling the same stuff.
Yeah.
And for me, on where we chose to open up, the communities that we chose to open up are very significant to me. My Heights location, which is our first location, I grew up in that neighborhood. So I'm very connected to the people in that community.
Yeah.
Not the new people, the actual community.
Absolutely.
And so I definitely wanted to have something on that side of town that represented us well, but also gave us options where we could put healthy food in our body but not feel like we're missing anything. So I really wanted, a lot of it came from frustration because I was vegan, going to two and three different restaurants, trying to piece meals together based on flavor, and what I was in the mood for. And I just got frustrated. It was expensive, it was time consuming, and I didn't understand why nothing existed that I could literally go to every day and never get bored.
I agree. When I was a vegan for about 3 to 6 months, and for one, I found that a lot of the restaurants that I went to were like soy based. Everything was soy based. I could do soy sometimes, but not everything.
Yeah.
And a lot of those vegan restaurants lack flavor. So you come home, you're putting ketchup in. You have to put all of these extra dressings to make the food taste good. So that kind of what like got me to end up going back to eating like chicken and fish and things of that nature. But one thing I can say about your restaurant is that it comes with a lot of flavor. It comes with a lot of style. It's very good, and it's different. I've never seen the way you present certain dishes. I've never seen it in that way. So that's why I consistently come to your restaurant, and I'm glad that you did open it up. Next question. How do you think we can get more of our young people and more of our adults to be vegan, to turn, or to, because I personally feel like every person that's living should be vegan for at least 3 months out of the year. I feel like you should give your body that time to relax. You should give your digestive system that time to recoup, and being vegan allows your body time to heal. How do you think we could get more people to become vegan for whether it's 3 months, 6 months, or a whole year?
Well, I think, the times that we're living in is the information ages, right? So there's so much information out there, and I think it starts with education. A lot of the livestock that we're putting in our bodies has a ton of hormones in it. So what your grandparents were raised on is not the same grade of meat that you're eating today, and that has alternative effects on your body.
Yes.
So I think it starts with education. I definitely think that it's a trend right now. I'm happy that it's a trend because it's a trend that's healing our communities. It's a trend that's making us healthier and living longer. But I think it also, what I love about it is that there's this constant dialogue that happens now. So in my restaurant, when I designed the menu, it really was from an approach of making sure that someone who eats meat wouldn't feel uncomfortable in my
Okay.
space, right? Just because I'm not serving you a steak doesn't mean that you're not going to like anything.
Yes.
So I really designed the menu and the options and the flavor to really give them similar taste and texture without being soy. Like, we do offer some soy products, but we also
Yes.
have non-soy alternatives.
Absolutely.
And I think that's important, that people feel like they're actually eating real food.
I agree.
We cook a variation of vegetables and things like that. So I think, it's a trend right now, but it's a trend that I'm happy about. And I think we can get more people to be vegan if we just continue to educate, continue to have dialogue on a consistent basis, just about food in general. I think veganism is exciting. It's an adventure. It actually introduces you to foods that you never, ever would try if you didn't try vegan food.
Yeah. Agreed.
So to me, it can actually be a lot of fun. And if you start cooking at home, even more fun.
Yeah, I agree 100%. What made me what made me more interested in being vegan was that when you study the body and you start studying why, Dr. Sebi, he taught me that disease is derived from mucus, and mucus is derived from meat and dairy products. So the more cheese, the more meat, the more meat that you eat, the more mucus builds up in your body, which gives the body more opportunities to have diseases in it. You know what I'm saying? You eliminate the mucus out your body, you eliminate the disease. And the average person is not even taking that in mind when they eating the steaks or the hamburgers or the chicken or the fish, that they're building up a certain amount of mucus. And especially if you don't work out, especially if you're adding the sugars and you're adding sweets and all of these different things, when you start looking at people of color, you start realizing, why are we dying so early? You shouldn't be dying at 50 or 60 or 70. You should be able to live to 100 years old. We're in the 21st century. But if you don't treat your body well, if you don't work out, if you don't eat properly, and if you don't nourish your body, then your body is not going to keep up in the long term.
Right.
I don't want to be 65, 70 years old and can't do a little jog or move around. But you have to take care of your body, and being a vegan is one of the best ways to do that.
Yeah, I think also, just learning how to shop also. If you look at a supermarket, because there's the whole thing about processed foods. And I think a lot of the things that Dr. Sebi makes us aware of is 100% fact and 100% confirmed in what we know, right? So we know that if you eat a piece of red meat, how long your body takes to actually break that down, and how hard your body actually has to work to break down that meat that you just consumed, right? Whereas if you're eating vegetables, it's an automatic, right?
Yes.
Your body doesn't have to do the work because it's natural,
Yes.
right? But even in a supermarket, when you go to the supermarket, you really should only stay on the outside aisles, right? The inside aisles, everything that is in the supermarket that's on the shelves, it's processed, it's packaged, it's full of sodium, it's full of sugar. A lot of times you just like what it is, so you don't even read the ingredients.
Yeah.
Half the ingredients you can't even pronounce because you don't know what it is,
Yes.
right? And so I think really understanding what whole food is, what electric food is, what
Yes.
real food is, and know that your food can't come in a box. That's not food or a package, right?
Absolutely. I look at it like if you drive like a Rolls Royce, you're not going to put like 87. You're going to go for like 93. And for our bodies, it's the same thing. Like we're electricity based beings. So if you're not consistently eating electricity based foods, that means you're not really powering yourself. And that's why we lack energy. That's why we get sick. That's why so many different things health wise is happening to our people. And I think that in order for you to make those changes in your life, you have to empower yourself with that knowledge first.
Absolutely. And you got to be open to it. I think, I think one of the most shocking moments I ever had is a person came in to the restaurant and he was with a friend who was ordering some food. And I said, "What can I get for you?" And he said, "Oh, I don't believe that food is the answer to cure illness. I don't believe in none of this. I don't believe in it." And I said, "Are you serious?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, I don't think any of it makes any sense." I said, "Okay, so there's no one in your family that's ill, no one in your family that has disease." And he said, "Yeah, but that's just how it is." And I think, that myth of accepting that, our grandmothers and our mothers and our aunties and uncles are sick because that's just how it's supposed to be or just how it is, it should be unacceptable to us.
Favorite quote: "The new illiterate of the 21st century are no longer people that can't read or write. The new illiterate of the 21st century are people that can't learn and unlearn." And I think one of the main things that plagues people of color is that we carry a lot of the bad habits that lead to our demise. Whether it's our food, whether it's how we were raised. Oh, my parents beat me, I'm beating my kids. Oh, my grandma's made these greasy foods, I'm fixing my kids these greasy foods. Or my grandparents or my family had this poverty-stricken mindset, I'm gonna pass this poverty-stricken mindset on to my kids. And sometimes you have to break, not sometimes, all the time, you have to break the cycle. Your child or your children is supposed to receive a better lifestyle than you.
100%.
Even if you have to go out there and empower yourself with knowledge, even if you have to let go of a lot of the bad habits that's hindering you, you're supposed to make sure that your child don't get hindered. Mm-hmm. And I think that a lot of the times we're just passing on that negative poverty-stricken mindset. Oh, so my parents beat me, so I'm smacking my daughter or my son across the face. But what is that going to teach them? They're going to do the same thing to their kids. So something like social workers, we have this thing we say, once you identify it, you have to rectify it. You have to identify the bad habits that's hindering you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of times, just in terms of the discipline that's required to be vegan, because it definitely requires a lot of discipline, right? So if you out here in these streets and you moving, and you're in a neighborhood where there really is no options, what do, right? So it's called preparation, right? So before you leave your house, there are certain things that you should never leave your home without, right? Water, spring water, right? Nuts.
Yeah.
Some fruit.
Yeah.
Those things should always be on you, because in the event that you're ever in a situation where you cannot get food to nourish your body, you can definitely feed your appetite with nuts, fruit, and water until you can actually sit down to a meal. A lot of the times we don't have that discipline, so we want instant gratification. We see the Popeyes, we see the Burger Kings, we see the McDonald's, is the Kansas Fried Chicken. It's easy, it's fast, it's cheap, I want it. It smells good, I want it. But we don't think about the fact that that $3 chicken sandwich that they're selling you, what is the quality of that meat? How can they sell it to you for $3, right? What did they pay for it? Right? And how long, and what effect is it going to have on your body? Instead, all we see is how good it looks, how good it smells, and it's cheap and it's fast, right? And that discipline that we don't have is the very same thing that's going to kill us.
That's a fact. All right. I like where this is going. So the next question is, do you think that for you personally, and I answer as well, did gentrification work for you or work against you?
I love this question. I love talking about gentrification. I will say this. I think that we can choose one of two things, right? We can choose to be victims or we can choose to be victors. And when we talk about gentrification, I definitely think that gentrification can have a negative impact on us individually and as a community.
It does have a negative impact, yeah.
It does.
Yes.
But I also think that we also can elevate our thinking to be in a position where we are the gentrifiers, right? So if I live in a community that doesn't have the amenities that I feel are necessary for my life, instead of waiting for someone else to come into my community and build it and create it, I'm going to create it for my community instead.
You ever see somebody like you ever throw like an old piece of like furniture away, and then like you walk past
And
like
it's
a
gone.
furniture store, and like you see that piece of furniture, or like somebody that's good with carpentry, like they get it, they fix it up, they shine it up. You like, yo, damn, like if it was looking like this before I
Right.
like threw it out, I'd have kept it. Gentrification doesn't make me mad because of what happened in the process of what gentrification does, right? What makes me mad about gentrification is that people of color in these communities had all the opportunity in the world
100%.
to change the community up, to change the school structure up, the streets up. We could have added the businesses, we could have added everything that's happening now. So now when you walking by and you see all these restaurants, they
Right.
charging you $4,000 to live in an apartment.
Right.
Like everything is just it's like a new Brooklyn, as Jay-Z calls it. And I'm like, yo, like you're telling me, like I remember a time where you couldn't walk on Malcolm X or Ralph.
This
Like,
is what I'm saying.
like
As
you
a-
would get knocked upside your
100%.
head. It was all type of drug activity, all type of like stuff that
It was
you just stay on
dangerous.
your
Right,
end.
right.
Now you could go get you a smoothie. You could go get you some vegan food. like excuse my language, white people outside 3 a.m. running. If you know
Comfortable as
anything
ever.
about Brooklyn, at 20 years ago, the people that was from Brooklyn wasn't going outside 3 o'clock in the morning.
Exactly.
We was like, yo, it's too late. You know what I'm saying? Make sure you home at a decent hour. The whole landscape has changed, but my thing is it's not benefiting our people. So for the young people that's coming out of college, like they gotta pay $3,000 for the rent. They gotta, they have to look around and not see businesses that reflect the things that they like necessarily. Don't get me wrong, there's people like yourself, but I consider you an outlier, right? I think that we did a horrible job at, making sure our community or taking care of our community and making sure it benefited us.
Oh, I 100% agree. I think as a young girl, I used to walk up and down the streets of Brooklyn and look and stop and stare at abandoned homes.
Yeah.
That was my thing to do. And, my mother used to get so furious with me because I would literally stop in front of abandoned homes and just stare at them because I couldn't understand why no one saw the beauty in these homes and in these spaces. And, now as an adult, I still have that. Like I can drive down the street, nothing gets past me. If it's a new business, I know about it right away.
Yeah.
Like it's just something that's in me. And I agree with you 100%. I think, we don't want what we had until somebody else has it, right? Or until somebody else takes it away. And I definitely think that we had ample opportunity to buy these homes before the property value skyrocketed, before the market exploded, when these homes were abandoned, when nobody wanted them. Even Harlem is a great example of that. Harlem, I remember when I got out of college, probably going to date myself a little bit, but when I got out of college, they were selling brownstone shells in Harlem for $1, right? And look at Harlem now, And I think it's also about collective economics, right? And so I might only have $5,000, right? But that doesn't mean that I can't have what I want, right? That means that I need to have relationships and support to build, to pull things together to acquire. And I think that's our biggest hurdle is how do we build together to acquire? Because you might not have all the money, right? But you want to make sure that you own. I think even Tyler Perry right now is a great example of, the things that he talks about is own whatever you can own. Yeah. You have to own. That's the only way to level the playing field. If you don't own, it can be taken away.
I think that our people have been convinced that material stuff is like the way of life. And like I had a conversation with a friend the other day, and he asked me, we was talking about like jeans that cost $2,000 or $3,000. He asked me, how much money do I think I should make for me to go out there and buy those jeans? And I told him that at my current mindset, that it does. I wouldn't go out there and buy them jeans whether I had 100,000 in my pocket, because it just didn't make any sense to me. And because I value myself and my time, and I value how hard I work to get the money, regardless whether it's $1,000 or one day $1,000,000. Like, I value that. And the perfect example that I could think about is Baby Boy. When he was like, when he was talking to Baby Boy in the movie, and he was like, "Yo, see, it's about the guns and the butter. Like, you want to go buy something that depreciates sooner you leave out the store. But what about the art? What about the property? What about the commercial real estate that we was just talking about on the ride here?
Right.
What about, look how the Jews, look how the foreigners, not knocking anybody, but look how other people are coming from outside of the United States, and they're killing us. Like,
But you know what it is? It really boils down to financial literacy, right?
That's a fact.
Our parents, and the generations that they come from, if they were not financially literate, they cannot teach you that skill or that mindset, right? So either you have to surround yourself with people that will educate you about being financially literate so that you can make sound decisions about how to move in this world. But other cultures, that's the foundation of those cultures. So, and they pool their money. They work together to acquire, which is something that we don't do, like I said before. So I think, being able to actually know, and when you talk about this whole gene conversation, it's funny because it brings me back to my 20 plus years in fashion where, I was the retailer selling $1,000 jeans, right? And my people were coming and buying it. You know what I mean? And we were hyping it up and we loved it. And that was the era that we were in at the time. But in hindsight, now that I'm looking back at that, did I own a pair of those jeans? Absolutely not. And would I ever spend that amount of money on something that's just tangible, that shows worth, but it shows worth only to my community? It doesn't show, if I walk down the street in another country, are they looking at me like, oh, he must have so much money because he has on these special jeans? Absolutely not. It actually doesn't matter, right? So the exterior is not as important as the interior, and what you have in your bank account has way more weight than what you look like on the outside.
But I've always felt like that whole material thing of people like, look at what I got, look at what car I got, look at what outfit I got. It was derived from a place of a low self-esteem because we didn't have our own property, because our parents didn't own a certain amount of stuff, because we didn't have a certain amount of money. It was important for us to be able to rock the new pair of Jordans, or to, and wear the new sweatsuit, because it showed that, we wasn't that, it wasn't that bad for us. You understand what I'm saying? Like, we wasn't that poverty stricken. It gave us like joy, and like, I remember wearing Jordans and wearing certain sneakers. But what was more important for me growing up was I understood that my great grandmother owned her house. I understood that, that it was important that you own property, and that, the family get to come over, and, you have
Right.
get-togethers. And that was like the first thought. So when you think about now, like, how our people view just their, look at how we treat our community, whether we own it or not. Look how we litter. Look how we throw stuff out of the window of our cars. Look how we throw garbage on the ground. Like, we don't value where we are. And I think that it's a part of that oppressive mindset that's been given to our people. And like, this is like the Matrix, right? So a lot of our people that are asleep and are potential agents, they carry these mindsets of like walking around, like, yo, I got $1,000 sweatsuit on, or I got a $20,000 car. But do you have property? Do you have residual income? What's your credit score like? If something happened to you right now, is your child okay? Is your family structure okay? Like, it's way bigger than our outfit or what we have, but because we went through so much growing up, we always connected that, like, I guess our pride and our integrity to like what we wore. You know what I'm saying? Go back to the Dapper Dan era, like, go back to like the '80s. Like, it was always like, yo, I gotta make sure I look good out here. But do you feel good out
But
here?
I think it's a matter of flash and status amongst us, because nobody else cares, right?
Yeah.
So it's really about the flash and the status for us. Like, I want to show you that I can flash and stunt more than you can, right? So it's about us feeling better than each other. And it really isn't relevant in the real world. I do think that there is a significant shift in terms of how that is going down. Like, I think it was way more intense back in the day than it is right now. I think people are starting to understand, because now we do have members of the community who are billionaires, right? That we can look to and be like, yo, he grew up in the same projects I grew up, and look at him now. You know what I mean? So I think that now that we have examples that people are starting to really understand. But you're right. Like, it definitely is something that continues to plague our community. But I do think that, like, if we look at Brooklyn, like, Brooklyn to me has always been beautiful. Always, right? We've always had beautiful brownstones. We've always had these amazing architectural structures, historical structures, and we still have opportunity, I think, but it's a collective opportunity because the markets here are crazy now. Brooklyn is one of the most expensive cities to live in the world.
Absolutely.
And trust and believe, if you're not earning a certain amount of money to take care of you and your family, you are going to get forced out. You're going to get forced out of Brooklyn, New York, the whole gamut, because it is becoming a city of the wealthy.
That's why it doesn't matter what type of jeans you have on. Like,
right.
I don't want to get pushed out of my community, so I make sure my income and my savings, and me and my lady make sure that we pool our money together so that we can be able to stay here. Mm-hmm. Because it's not the city not going to decide because they make the rent and they make these bills a certain way that I can't live in my community. Like, no, I'm not going to give up on my community like that. So I fight to stay here. Mm-hmm. Let's go to the next question real quick. Do you think that people of color lost control over their community?
That's a loaded question.
It is.
I think to a degree, yes. It pains me when I hear...
What took you so long to take?
Because I had to figure out how I wanted to come at that, because it's an emotional question for me. Because I think... Like, I hear stories all the time. Like, I had a customer come in, and he was like, my grandmother is selling her house down the street. And I was like, why is she selling it? Yeah. You here. And he looked at me, he's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, why is she selling it? And he was like, well,
I'm not to cut you off. There's a business across the street, like up the block from your restaurant, right? Right on the corner of Ralph and McDonough. And their goal, they go around the community, right? And they get people to partner with them. All right, they'll knock on the two houses, it could be two brownstones next to each other. They'll knock on both doors. Their goal is to get you to give them 50 to 60% equity or whatever of their house so that they could build a condo where they tell you that you could get residual income.
Yeah, they're doing that to my uncle actually owns a lot on Warefield.
Yeah.
Between Bushwick and Broadway.
Yeah.
And the lot is big enough for 3 properties.
Yeah.
Right? And he currently runs a church on that property.
Yeah.
And they come to him every day trying to sell that concept or that idea. My whole thing is this. We don't have to sell. If we are able to, as a family, like, my whole family grew up on Pulaski, right? Yeah. And there was a house that just stayed in the family for generations and generations. And everybody lived in that house. And when they were done, they moved out, the next generation moved in. And I think there's something magical about that concept that we don't hold true anymore. Yeah. And I definitely think that, we have some learning. I think some realities to come to terms with. But I definitely think that we gave a lot up. We're giving a lot away because we've never seen somebody offer us so much money before, and we feel like that money is equivalent to power, and it actually isn't. Saying no is the power, right? Saying no and maintaining what you own is the power, because then they can't take it away from you. And a lot of times the money that they offer you, because of the current market value and how expensive it is out here,
it ain't nothing.
It's nothing.
But listen, I think that it goes back to this oppressive system that we live in, like if this was like a superhero movie, like people of color, like we have like nemesis, like we have people that are consistently working on convincing us that we're not the powerful beings that we are. And one of the strides that they use is you have people of color knocking on people of color doors in
Oh, yeah.
2000s
Oh,
and
yeah.
2001. Yo, you should sell your house, man. You should sell your house. You can move to North Carolina and buy other properties. It was an agenda to get people of color out so that they could get Caucasian and white people in. So
Look at Detroit right now.
it goes back to this. People of color will continue to get oppressed and exploited until they take control over their minds, and then they take control over their communities. This will continue to happen because we don't have the knowledge and the know-how. Some of us do, but then the people that have the knowledge don't have the funds, and the people that got the funds don't got the know-how. So this is all by design, though, because you got to go back. If you look at how history was played out, at a certain point, people of color only had their only choice was to build things within their communities, like Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Yep.
You understand what I'm
Yep.
saying, right?
Black
So
Wall
we
Street.
had to Black Wall Street. We had to make sure that the dollar touched the black hand.
And that's our history,
Yeah.
right? That's from whence we come. So why is it such a struggle for us to get back there?
Yeah.
Right? Because that existed. That was our reality at one point. And, there's a lot that I think, we talked about on the way here, just also from a spiritual perspective, being of the world, right?
Yeah.
So the world leads you to believe that all these things that are external are important, when actually it's your character, right? It's your upbringing, how you support one another, how you grow together, how you build together. Those are the concepts and the things that we don't necessarily see in practice every day. And that company that you talked about on the corner, it's interesting because I literally just talked about them today. And I was like, you know what makes me mad? How did the community allow them to open without holding them accountable to doing something in the community for the community that we need to see that's run by us? And there's, a lot of times we don't realize that there's a simple concept and it's just holding people accountable, right? So if I live on Macon Street, right, and every single house on that block was once Black owned, right? Why, if we collectively agree that we're not going to give our properties to anyone, why is it that somebody chooses, oh, I'm going to sell?
Ignorance is bliss until you fall off the cliff. When you lack knowledge, and I think that the crack epidemic and the everything that happened within the 70s, the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, it kind of wiped out like 75 to 80% of black wealth. And with that black wealth, it wiped out a lot of our grandparents, a lot of our great grandparents. And so much knowledge got lost in the source. And our young people thought that them selling their grandma's house that they worked their whole life to get was equivalent to 1.2. When they hit you with taxes, you probably only have like 300,000 left, unless you have the knowledge of somebody that's financially literate. And how many people understand taxes and how to get tax breaks? Not a lot of people.
But
So
also a lot of the people that are buying these homes are tricky, right? And so they lead you to believe, oh, you haven't paid your water bill. There's a lien on your property. Let me take it off your hands, right?
listen, that's how they got my
real
great
hustle.
grandmother.
That's
They got
a real
my great
hustle.
grandmother like that. They got a lot of elderly people like that in the 90s. My great grandmother ended up doing the reverse mortgage and lost her house. I'm working toward becoming a wealthy individual, and I'm gonna buy my great grandmother house back. But that's how the bank did it. One day out of nowhere, you got a letter in the mail like you owe $20,000. My grandmas couldn't get $20,000, so they like, yo, try this reverse mortgage. You would keep the house, and when you die, go back to the bank. Why the F would you give the house back
Right.
to the bank when you just worked so hard to pay this house down?
Right.
It should stay into the family's name.
Right.
But a lot of our young people don't understand legacy. excuse me, they don't understand how important it is to hold on to the things that your family worked for and to pass that on to your kids.
Right.
Money is not real, especially money within the United States of America.
Right.
It's illusion. It since the 50s and the 60s is not backed by nothing. So they could print up as much money as they want, and that's why milk costs $6, because the more money they print up, the more inflation goes up. Money is not backed by anything.
Does a bottle of milk really cost $6?
I'm not gonna say a good bottle of milk. Yeah, it costs about $5 or $6 when you used to get that for $1.50.
Yeah.
So the more money they print up, the more problems that the average person ends up having, and that's because we don't understand finances. We don't understand how we should invest our money so it could work for us. So it ends up working against us.
Right.
For me, to answer the question, I think that we don't have control over our community. I think that we have given away our accountability on the spiritual front, on the community front, on the family front. We allow our government, our churches, our schools, we allow them to control our lives instead of us remembering that the power lies with the people. So the way our community structure is now is our fault. But we can teach our young people to make sure that they get credit, to make sure that they could get that loan so that they can open up businesses that benefit them.
But you know what? You know what's interesting? The first thing that happens in a community that is being overtaken is the schools, right? So you go from there being schools in the community that all the neighborhood kids go to, right? To when the gentrification starts to take place. Now there are other ethnicities involved in the decisions that take place in the school, the curriculum that is being taught to your children, the activities that are being dictated and mandated in those buildings. And, we are not present, right? Because we don't have time, because we're working just to make ends meet, right? So we don't have time to go to the PTA meetings. We don't have time to, go to the chancellor meetings and know what's actually on the agenda for our children next year, right? And because we're not present when these decisions are being made, we don't know. And we lose control of our schools. And that is the foundation of the education that is being taught to our children.
But here you got to go back to the Board of Ed. They get their funding from property tax, right? So the way the redlining worked, because honestly speaking, the Board of Ed is the most segregated entity within the United States of America. The way they formulate how they put their schools, and the schools that have the good funding, and the schools that have all the good teachers, it's all in particular areas. So it knocks out so many different people to get into those schools. For example, take a school like PS35. I went to PS35. It's right here on McDonald and Lewis. My sister / aunt works at this school called Beekman Hill. It's on 59th and Lex. It's two different entities. They just got awarded $1 million to put a garden on top of the roof. You understand what I'm saying? They have all the books. They have all the resources. They don't need for anything. The parents don't need for anything, because the area itself, it demands that the school is funded so that the kids within that environment with their family is paying $7,000 probably for the mortgage or the rent, that their kid is going to a school that could put them on the next level. Not private, but public, right?
And it makes them feel good. I mean, my daughter goes to a school similar to that. And it makes them feel good to say, no, my children don't go to private school. They go to public school.
Absolutely.
But they control that school through the resources and the finances that they filter through, right? And so my daughter goes to a school like that. We live in Brooklyn, but she goes to school in the city. And she had to test to get into this school. It's Nest M in the city. And it's so funny because I was that active parent trying to be present, going to the PTA meetings, ran for one of the offices at PTA just to be involved, right? The level of discomfort that I felt from the parents looking at me like I was crazy for wanting to be involved, ostracizing me when I would volunteer at the book fairs, literally not speaking to me the whole time I'm there. Yeah. Very cliquey. But it made me take notice that, okay, this is the world, right? This is the world that we live in. And it's about, I work hard every day, right? Whereas they may come from money, or their husbands are physicians and this, that, and the other, and they're able to give money on a level that we're not able to. So you are then treated very differently because they know that you're not generating the type of fundraising and capital that they can for the school. So they're held on a much higher level or viewed as much more important than your family is.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a hierarchy system. So it can happen. And I went to school here in Crown Heights. You know, I went to Lefferts, you know, Erasmus Night School, like in Flatbush. You know, the schools that I went to are very different than how my daughter is growing up.
No, I understand. We used to play Erasmus. I went to Harry Van Arsdale, and I think that my daughter is gonna end up in the same type of structured school, to be honest with you, though, because I'm gonna teach my daughter, right, to believe in herself under all circumstances, and I'm gonna also teach her to be able to adapt in different
Exactly.
different surroundings, right? So like I had to do the same. Like I started off in private school, then I went back in public school, and my grandparents taught me how to educate myself at home. So they gave me those skill sets so that I could succeed. I think that it's sad, but in order for you to have a good school structure, you need at least 65 or 70% of those parents to be active parents. Because if you go into those successful schools, you see that they have a 90% rate of parents that's coming to open school nights. They're volunteering.
Yes.
Like there's no drop off of parents that's gonna be supportive of their kids. But if you look at the schools in the poverty stricken areas, the parents don't make those meetings. They don't make open school nights. They're too busy. They gotta go to work. They don't give any money to the school. So they really have no control over what happens to their kid while they're in school. The city controls that. And it's up to you as a parent to understand the variables of how the system works for you to implement your child in certain places so that they can succeed.
Right.
But it's about knowledge and know-how.
I think it's about knowledge and know-how. And I think it's also about understanding that these schools are public, right? So if you can't afford to give $1, you can't afford to give $1. But what you can afford to give is time, right? Yeah. And I think it's important that we really recognize that our presence is so necessary. It's actually a life and death situation right now. I mean, look at the politics in the world right now. Look at everything that's taking place. Like we got to stand up and we got to be present and we got to make our voices known. And we have to be involved in decision making, period. Like the fact that we kind of fall back and allow these decisions to take place without our input is not okay. So when you ask me about, you know, the community being taken over, like to me, we've taken a backseat in a lot of different ways. You know, where we're just allowing things to happen. We're allowing things to take place because we may not necessarily have the tools or the know-how, like you said, to stand up and fight against these things.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Thank you for your response. So, do you think that, next question, how can we teach our youth to be able to build their community in a way that benefits them and their family?
I think definitely by showing examples. I try really hard to make sure that my daughter watches what it is that I'm doing and she understands. And as much as I can pull her in and make her a part of what I'm trying to build, I try to do that every single day. You know, I didn't have those examples. The only example I had, my grandfather raised 13 kids and never worked for anybody a day in his life. And that was the first and the only real level of entrepreneurship that I've ever known. And he always worked extremely hard. Like he was the hardest working person I ever saw in my life. And, you know, I think that, you know, our kids are growing up in a different day and age than we did, right? So everything is instant gratification. Everything is social media. And, you know, we're raising a generation that's high in anxiety and high in depression because of the fact that all of these outside forces exist and they're literally creating a world that they live in, right? I definitely think that if we are to raise accountable, productive human beings, that we have to show them what it is to work hard and smart. We have to show them what it is to build strategy. We have to show them what it is to be responsible and accountable. And we definitely have to show them how to walk into any room and be able to have a conversation. I think the art of conversation is the scariest thing about this generation for me. I managed, upwards of 300 people on staff when I worked in retail. And, the level of intelligence to actually have a conversation, is really being broken down right now because everyone is so in tune to the phones and the social media that there's no conversation. There's no real dialogue happening.
I think that, or the powers that be understand that this oppressive mindset and system that has lasted all of these years is about to die out. So they're at their wits end. The system is understanding that it's about to end, right? So many people are waking up. So many people are striving to evolve their minds, their spirits. I think that I just lost my train of thought. What was we just talking about?
We was talking about the how do we get the new generation to actually
do something or to be evolved. And I think that I guess the system that be,
how do we teach them?
And the system that be, it works so that this oppressive system works so that so many of our young people are distracted, right? So all the way the phones are, the way social media is all like a part of this oppressive system where we don't connect to each other.
Right.
We don't have a conversation with each other because I'm on my phone, you on your phone. It's to the point where people go to concerts and they spend, if the concert was 3 hours, they spend 2 hours recording.
Yeah.
So you're not even really in. You would spend $500 for this ticket and you like this the whole night. Gotta get this on my camera.
Not even present, enjoying the experience.
But back in the day, you had your phone in your pocket. You was like, yo, this the best concert in the world. You feel it in your soul. I've been to over 20 Jay-Z concerts. Not to say I didn't pull out my phone and record, but there's been pockets where I just say, yo, put your phone away. Enjoy this moment.
Right.
And it's been some of the best moments of my life.
Of course.
To hear the music and to see the vibe and frequency of all the people around you that's singing the same songs. I think that this generation is being primed to disconnect from each other.
Well, pair that with reality TV. It's the dumbing down of America, right? And our community is being hit the hardest because we're watching ourselves on reality TV doing a whole lot of things that really we shouldn't be, right?
Absolutely.
And so those are the examples that we don't want to show.
But look at the 90s. In the 90s, they had A Living Single, Martin,
right.
Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Different World, The Cosby Show. Then they were promoting HBCUs. They was promoting black family structures. The powers that be was like, nah, this can't be, because I think that this oppressive system knows that people of color get their power from the family, from the community. So they threw so many different variables within that structure that worked against us.
Right. But that's why it's important that we recognize that this time, everything is about timing. I firmly believe that. And I think we are in such prime time right now in terms of how we can turn the tables for our community and how we can take advantage of certain things, because we know we've always been hot, right?
Yeah.
But right now, our culture is being recognized as that by others. You know what I mean? And so, we have all these things going around within our community, Black Girl Magic, and, we have examples of Black wealth in our communities now that have reached that echelon of, success that we can now look at to say that's the benchmark. We have, again, I'm going to bring up Tyler Perry because I think he did something phenomenal, especially as it relates to Black Hollywood. We have so many talented people, actors in Black Hollywood who can't get a job, right?
Yeah.
They can't get a job because they're not sleeping with X, Y, and Z, or they're not connected to certain people that would give them the in. And now he's taking control of that, right?
Absolutely.
And so I think there's so many examples now that we have of how to set the blueprint to get to where we need to get. But the challenge is staying focused. The challenge is really thinking through what your strategy is going to be. I will say, like, even for me being a small business owner, this is not my first business. This is my third business. My first business was clothing stores. I worked for retailers forever. And I literally decided one day to take my power back. And instead of making them millions of dollars and killing myself, because that's really what was happening, anything I'm passionate about, I work hard.
Yeah.
And so I was making them millions of dollars. And I recognized that that was powerful, right? How do I take that skill set that I'm giving away because they can't pay me enough for it? How do I take that skill set and actually use it in a way that empowers my family and those around me in my community, right? And I decided to open my first store. Didn't know what I was doing, scared as hell, took all my savings and liquidated it in order to fuel this passion. And we had it for 10 years, right? And no one knew that we would have it for 10 years. And the only reason why we actually ended that was because of gentrification, And we didn't own the building. We tried to buy it, but we didn't own it. So that chapter closed. And it took me years to get over that experience because I poured so much into it. But it took me so many years to actually stick my feet in the pond again because I knew that I wasn't in a position to own commercially, right? I knew that I was about to make a huge investment because this is a new industry for me. Food is I'm not formally trained, and it's definitely, I learn every single day. But I do know that I love it. And I know that I'm serving my people, and I know that I'm serving my community. So I decided to do it again, right? But it's scary. Nothing is guaranteed. And it's expensive, It's expensive to put your key in the door every day because every day somebody has their hand in your pocket, right? New York City, you pay taxes 5 times a year. How do you do that and survive as a small business in New York City, right? When you have wealthy individuals who don't even pay a quarter of the taxes that you pay, because you also pay personal taxes annually, right? So you're paying taxes 6 times a year, and on top of everything else. So I think, there's something very powerful in knowing that you have to show up for your community, knowing that it's important for us to walk into a business and see a Black face and see a Black face behind the counter and know that a Black person owns this business. But it's also really important that we intentfully spend our dollars and create the cycle of wealth. And I think we all are aware that the dollars fly out of our community, right? So how do we literally commit to making sure that every dollar that you spend, and I think it's a huge challenge for us as a community. Yeah. But if we are literally calling our bluff, if we can literally sit here and commit to say, every time I step outside my door, I'm going to intentionally only spend money with my people, that would be a game changer for us.
I think that it goes back into getting rid of that poverty-stricken mindset that people of color have been given, because you go back to the Martin Luther King time. What made Martin Luther King was so powerful because he was a liaison between the people and the government. But when he told the people, we not riding the bus no more, the people stopped riding the bus. And what happened to the bus? The bus went out of service, or they went out of business because they needed the black dollar to support their business. So
every business needs the black dollar.
We lack that now.
Absolutely.
There's nobody that could come out and tell 20 million people of color, like, don't shop at Popeyes, man. Like, at the end of the day, they're not giving back to the communities, don't shop. Like, we continue
But here's the thing. We shouldn't even allow these businesses to open in our community without giving to our community.
You're right. Absolutely. But look at, if you go into all the wealthy and rich communities, even within Brooklyn, you don't see McDonald's, you don't see Popeyes, you don't see nothing. You see mom and pops or businesses that been there for 30 years and better, because they won't allow those businesses within their community. You ain't coming with your pollution and whatever comes with your business. Now keep that out of our community.
Right. And they're standing up for what they believe in
Absolutely.
and creating the reality that they want to see in their community. And we have the ability to do the same. It's just a matter of who's committed to actually holding us all accountable to make that our reality. And I think, I haven't been to District 8's meeting, but I would definitely say there's a strong sense of pride in the Bed-Stuy community that I feel. When I open my doors, I cried for a week straight because the people that would come into my space, I mean, you're one of them, right? But there were so many people in that community that just came in and said, we are so happy that you're here.
Yeah.
We appreciate that you're here. We appreciate that you chose to open in this community, and we're proud of you. And we want to see you here for many, many years.
Yeah.
That brought me to tears because no one's ever said that to me,
Yeah.
I think that being able to recognize that we do have a lot of talent in our communities. We do have a lot of people who really want to see our communities do well, but we have to do right by them, right? So that means we can't walk by and not, patronize or give a kind word if you can't patronize, or say, you know what, I can't afford that, but this is what I can afford. What can you do for me?
Yeah.
And I say that because we have to meet people where they are.
Yeah.
Like I just had a situation this week where I was like, there's a business near me and I don't see them every day like I should, like I thought I would when I opened my doors. And I said, as a business owner, what is it that I'm not doing right?
Yeah.
Because I'm always going to evaluate myself. And I said, you know what? Then let me ask them what it is that they want from me, right? And what they wanted from me was consistency on certain things. Okay, noted, right? But they also wanted me to make sure that the things that they loved are always available. And that's something that I can do easily, right? But I also want to show them that I appreciate their business. So for that, we're creating the special menu and we're offering them special prices for that special menu,
Yeah.
right? And so there are ways that we just have to come together.
Absolutely.
It's actually simpler than we make it. But I just think that, sometimes we overcomplicate things.
So we got about 1 or 2 more questions, and I appreciate your content and your answers. It's so needed, and I relate to everything that you're saying. How do you pay it forward?
I love this question. The same thing that I just said, intentful, right? So I'm serving my community every day. I make sure as much as possible, every person that I do business with is a person of color. I also mentor quite a few people, quite a few women in my circle. But I try to hire people within my community, young chefs that either are from Brooklyn or moving here from other states that literally just want an opportunity to serve. And I make myself really available. Like as much as I physically can make myself available, I make myself available.
I mean, that's proof because you're here right now. You worked all day and you found your time to come and be a guest on my podcast. So I really appreciate it. How I pay it forward is similar. I've worked at high schools, junior high schools. I've worked at camps. I make sure that I give the knowledge or information that these young people within my community ask me for. I speak at schools. I am a social worker in the making. I just need to take this test for the state and I'll be a social worker. So I have the knowledge and the know-how when I'm talking to my friends to actually give them, a skill set or idea that can actually lead to them better in their lives. So every day, whether I'm putting up a video, whether I created a podcast called Young Gifted and Black, and I find people like yourself that's doing stuff within the community, or whether I found the person that owns the radio station that's Black owned, I make sure that everything is intentional. And I make sure that I'm living out what I'm saying.
Right.
So when you see me, if you ask me about a business or you ask me about how I'm making these shirts or what makes me do the things that I'm doing, I give you valid answers. And I am the change that I want to be. So the change that I want to see, I'm currently that change.
Right.
So everything that I'm looking for in the universe and the world, I present that to the universe and the world on a consistent basis. The last question is, do you want your kids to be entrepreneurs or do you want them to take a career where they work 30, 40 years for somebody else?
I think I want that decision to be theirs. I think that it's important as parents that we lay the blueprint and we show them examples of both. But I think the time that they're growing up in and what the world will be when they are adults to make that decision, we don't know what that time is going to look like, right?
Yeah.
And so I can't really say. All I can say is that I want them to be free thinkers. I definitely want them to be active members in the movement,
Yes.
and understand their place in this world. But I want them to be free to be able to pursue whatever it is that they desire. And I want them to also be free to understand that it doesn't have to be one thing.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't. It doesn't. You can do one thing for 5 years and switch it up and change it to something else, you know? And that freedom is important to me. And I want that to be very important for them and how they view the world.
I mean, being that I had a family that taught me, how to be humble and how to love unconditionally. And I have hopes of creating success for my daughter where she's financially free. I personally don't want my child to have to work for anybody. I would like to create that opportunity where she has options, like you just said. So if she want to travel the world for 5 years, or she want to start a business, or she mess up $100,000 or $1,000,000, that she could recoup from that, and that she could be fearless and living out her dreams. Because sometimes you gotta take chances.
Oh, 100%.
And sometimes things just not gonna work out, regardless of how much money you got or credit you got. It just don't work. So you have to take that risk. My goal in doing all of this in the podcast and creating my own brand or my own company, being a inspirational, motivational speaker, my goal is to inspire young people, like Nina Simone said, is to remind you and to get you curious of how amazing and how beautiful your culture and your history is. To remind you that if you're willing to put your mind to something, if you're willing to believe in yourself under all circumstances, that you could create whatever reality that you seek, regardless of your circumstance, regardless of the government, regardless of your religion base, that you have what's the creator, the most high gave us all the variables needed to manifest on the highest level. So my goal is just to remind you that. And the best way to remind you is just to be that, to show you that. So that's why I consistently keep moving every single day. That's why I connect myself with people like yourself, because the goal is to show them what Black excellence really looks like. Thank you for coming. Where can they where's your restaurants located at?
It was my pleasure. I enjoyed this so much. Greedy Vegan is on Bergen Street between Nostrand and Rogers. That was our first location. And our new location is right in the heart of Bed-Stuy on Ralph Avenue between Macon and McDonough in Brooklyn.
What's your Instagram?
Greedy Vegan.
Okay.
Greedy spelled Greedi. Vegan.
Listen, at the end of the day, I eat at this restaurant probably like 3 or 4 times a week. It's some of the best food that I ever ate. And at the end of the day, it gives me a good feeling knowing that I'm supporting a Black-owned business of a strong Black queen that's actually working toward bettering her community. My goal is just to show you what inspiration look like when you believe in yourself and when you're willing to bring your thoughts and turn your thoughts to your actual real dreams and your real realities. My name is Carrick Wise. I represent Koolforlife Inc. This is another episode of Young, Gifted, and Black, and I'll talk with y'all soon.